The Church of St. Michael the Archangel in Victoria Island has never looked more beautiful than it does on this Saturday morning in Lagos. 600 white roses line every pew. Crystal chandeliers imported from Italy hang from the vaulted ceiling, throwing light across silk tablecloths and the faces of 500 guests who have been talking about this wedding for 18 months. The governor sits in the front row. International press stand 3 deep along the side walls. Outside, a crowd of onlookers presses against the iron gates, straining for a glimpse of what everyone in Lagos agrees is the social event of the decade. Emeka Obi stands at the altar in a white agbada embroidered with gold thread, hands clasped in front of him, eyes on the church doors. He is 29 years old, broad-shouldered, with deep dark brown skin and a clean low cut, and he has the kind of stillness that people sometimes mistake for calm. It is not calm. It is a man who has made a decision he cannot take back and is standing inside the last few minutes before it becomes permanent. He found out 6 weeks ago. His mother came to him on a Tuesday evening, alone, without calling ahead. She sat across from him at his dining table and placed a brown envelope between them and said nothing. Inside the envelope were hospital documents, a paternity test, dated 4 months earlier, commissioned privately. The result was clear. The child Adiz Nwosu carries is not Emeka's. The father is a man named Bello, Chief Obi's longest-standing business associate, a man who has sat at their family table for 3 years and shaken Emeka's hand at every family gathering since the engagement was announced. Mama Obi had found a hospital scan receipt in Adiz's handbag during a family lunch. She said nothing to anyone. She investigated quietly, confirmed everything, and brought the truth to her son because she believed he deserved to hold it in his own hands and decide what to do with it himself. She did not tell Chief Obi. She waited. Emeka spent 6 weeks deciding. He did not confront Adiz. He did not cancel the wedding publicly. He attended every pre-wedding event, smiled in every photograph, shook every hand. He watched Adiz across dinner tables and tried to find a version of this that made sense, a version where there was an explanation worth hearing, a version where 500 guests and 18 months of planning and 2 families bound together by money and ambition could be unwound quietly and with dignity. He could not find one. So he is standing at the altar now, in his white agbada, waiting. Adiz appears at the church doors and the organ swells and 500 people rise to their feet. She is breathtaking, deep dark brown skin glowing under the chandelier light, a 4 million naira gown that moves like water around her, her father's hand on her arm, her chin lifted in the particular way of a woman who has already decided which version of her life she is choosing. She walks down the aisle looking only forward, and Emeka watches her come, and he thinks about his mother sitting across from him at a dining table with a brown envelope, and he thinks about 6 weeks of silence, and he makes his peace with what comes next. The pastor opens the ceremony. He speaks about love and covenant and the sacred nature of the vow they are about to make. Emeka stands at the altar facing Adiz, both of them before God and 500 witnesses, and the pastor asks them to face each other and prepare their hearts for the vows they are about to exchange. It is at this exact moment that the commotion begins at the back of the church. It starts as a murmur, heads turning, necks craning, the rustle of 500 people redirecting their attention from the altar to the rear doors. A woman has slipped inside the church. She is not a guest. That much is clear from the first glance. Her clothes are torn at the hem and faded from too many washes and not enough of them. Her natural hair disheveled from days without proper care, her feet in worn-down slippers that have seen too many Lagos streets. She is heavily pregnant, her belly round and low, one hand resting against the door frame for support as she looks around the church interior with the wide, careful eyes of someone who wandered in looking for a quiet corner and has found herself in the middle of something enormous. She had positioned herself at the church entrance that morning with the rest of the small crowd drawn by the spectacle of the wedding. Wealthy guests arriving in convoys, caterers unloading food, the general abundance that surrounds the rich on their important days. She had been hoping for kindness at the gate, a few naira from a generous guest, enough for something to eat. When the doors opened briefly and the crowd surged forward for a glimpse of the bride's arrival, she slipped inside without thinking, driven by nothing more than heat and exhaustion, and the dim instinct that somewhere in a building this large there might be a corner where a heavily pregnant woman could rest her feet for 5 minutes without being noticed. She has been noticed. A heavy-set man in a senator's cap 3 rows from the back rises to his feet and grabs her arm. He is not gentle about it. He pulls her toward the door with the particular roughness of a man who has decided that removing an inconvenience quickly is more important than how the removal looks. She does not cry out. She does not struggle. She simply tries to keep her balance with one hand pressed to her belly, her eyes cast down, absorbing the humiliation with the practiced stillness of someone for whom humiliation is not new. The scuffle draws every eye in the building, including Emeka's. He sees her from the altar, this woman in torn clothing being dragged toward the exit, one hand protecting her unborn child, her face carrying not fear but a dignity so quiet and complete that it stops his breath. He sees the roughness of the man's grip on her arm. He sees the way she does not beg, does not perform distress, simply endures. And then, across the full length of the church, across 500 guests and 600 white roses and 18 months of planning, she looks up. Their eyes meet. It lasts less than 3 seconds. She does not know who he is. She sees only a man at the altar in a white agbada looking directly at her with an expression she cannot read. He sees a woman whose eyes are deep dark brown and clear, and carrying the particular dignity of someone who has stopped being surprised by difficulty. Something shifts in Emeka's chest, not pity, not sympathy, but recognition. The recognition of a man who has spent 6 weeks watching people perform their lives for an audience suddenly seeing someone who is simply, entirely, without performance of any kind, real. He steps back from the altar. The pastor blinks. Adiz turns. The organ, which has been playing softly, trails into silence note by note as the organist registers that something is wrong. Emeka steps forward to the microphone. He does not look at the back of the church again. He looks at the congregation with the same stillness he has been holding all morning, and he speaks clearly and without cruelty. I cannot marry this woman. Not because I do not care for her, but because she is carrying a child that is not mine, and she has known this since before this wedding was planned, and she was going to let me raise that child without ever knowing the truth. I have documentation. I am not making an accusation. I am stating a fact. He turns and looks at Adiz. She does not deny it. She stands completely still in her 4 million naira gown, and her face does something terrible. Not anger, not protest, but the specific collapse of a person whose carefully constructed world has just come apart in front of everyone they know. The governor shifts in the front row. Senator Nwosu rises to his feet. Chief Obi grips the edge of his pew. Emeka removes his boutonniere. He places it on the altar carefully, like a period at the end of a sentence. And then he walks. Not out of the side door. Not toward his father in the front pew. He walks back down the full length of the aisle, past the governor, past the press, past 500 people who have stopped breathing, straight toward the back of the church where the heavy-set man still has his hand on the pregnant woman's arm. Emeka stops in front of them. He looks at the man's hand on her arm. He does not say a word. The man releases her and steps back without being asked. Emeka turns to her. She is looking up at him with the same clear, careful eyes from across the church, and up close he can see that she is exhausted in a way that goes deeper than tiredness, and that she is trying very hard not to show it. "What is your name?" he asks. She looks at him, at his agbada, at the church behind him, at 500 faces staring in absolute silence, and something in her face decides he is not a threat. "Ngozi," she says. "When did you last eat, Ngozi?" A pause. "Yesterday morning." Emeka shrugs off his agbada jacket, the embroidered white one, the one that cost more than she has probably held in her hands in the last year, and he wraps it around her shoulders. He takes out his phone and calls his driver. "We are going to the hospital," he says to her. "You do not have to say anything else right now." She looks up at him for a long moment. This man who just walked away from the most expensive wedding Lagos has seen in a decade to wrap his wedding jacket around a stranger's shoulders. Something in her face that has been braced and closed and carefully held together for a very long time loosens, just slightly, at the edges. She nods, just once, and accepts his hand to help her stand. Behind them, 500 guests sit in complete silence. Adiz stands at the altar in 4 million naira of white and gold. The 600 white roses do not move. Emeka and Ngozi walk out of the church together into the white Lagos morning, and that is how it begins. The private ward at Eco Hospital is quiet and cool and smells of antiseptic and fresh linen. And Ngozi sits on the edge of the bed looking around the room with the careful attention of someone trying to memorize it before it disappears. The doctors confirm what Emeka already suspects. She is 34 weeks pregnant, severely malnourished, her iron levels critically low, her blood pressure elevated from stress and insufficient food, and 3 weeks of sleeping outside on Lagos streets. The baby is small but present, heartbeat strong, a girl. Emeka pays the bill at the front desk without looking at the total. He arranges for Ngozi to remain in the private ward for as long as she needs. He leaves his number with the nurses and tells them to call him if anything changes. He goes home and sits in his living room in silence for a very long time. Lagos does not give him that silence for long. By evening the wedding video is everywhere, every platform, every group chat, every television screen in every Lagos sitting room. The moment Emeka raises his hand at the altar plays on a loop. Adiz's stillness, her failure to deny it, plays directly after. The image of Emeka crossing the street in his white agbada to crouch beside a pregnant woman on the pavement, captured by 3 separate phones from the church steps, becomes the image of the week, then the month. Comment sections overflow. Radio presenters argue. Women's groups issue statements. The nation has an opinion, and it has it loudly. Inside all of that noise, Emeka's phone rings with a summons from Chief Obi. The family house in Ikoyi is as it has always been. Large, ordered, expensive, and cold in the specific way of houses where appearances have always mattered more than honesty. Chief Obi sits behind his desk in his study, a broad man with deep dark brown skin and grey at his temples, and the expression of someone who has decided that the appropriate response to humiliation is fury. "You have disgraced this family," Chief Obi says. "You have disgraced the Nwosu family. You will issue a public apology. You will meet with Adiz. You will find a way to repair what you have destroyed." Emeka sits across from his father. He is very still. "How long did you know?" he asks. Chief Obi stops. "How long?" Emeka says again quietly. "Did you know that the child Adiz is carrying belongs to Bello?" The study is very quiet. 2 months, Chief Obi says finally. "I found out 2 months before the wedding. And you said nothing to me. The merger between our families. You said nothing to me." Emeka's voice does not rise. It does not need to. The merger was worth more to you than telling your son that his fiancée was carrying another man's child. You looked me in the face for 2 months and said nothing. Chief Obi straightens. "Business requires." "I am not interested in what business requires." Emeka stands. "I am your son. That should have required more." He walks out. He does not slam the door. He closes it quietly, which is somehow worse, and he does not return his father's calls for 2 weeks. What he does, every morning, is visit Ngozi. He brings her food from the restaurant on Omadu Bello Way that she mentioned once, offhandedly, smelling it as they drove past. He brings Chidinma, his cousin's daughter who is studying nutrition, to sit with her and talk about what her body needs. He sits in the chair beside her bed and they talk, first about small things and then about everything. Ngozi tells him about Onitsha, her seamstress shop on the main market road, the one she built herself after 3 years of apprenticeship, the one she was proudest of in her life. Her landlord decided the property was worth more than her tenancy and burned it down in a dispute that the police refused to investigate because the landlord knew the right people. Her boyfriend, the father of Chisholm, the baby she is carrying, left 2 weeks after she told him she was pregnant, forwarding his new number to nobody. She walked to Lagos because her aunt lives here and her aunt is the only family she has left. When she arrived, the aunt's house was locked and the neighbors said she had relocated to Abuja and left no forwarding address. She tells him all of this in the same matter-of-fact tone she used when she told him she had last eaten yesterday morning. Not asking for pity, not dramatizing, simply reporting the facts of her life with the directness of someone who has already processed the grief and is now just carrying the weight of it. Emeka listens. He does not offer solutions. He does not perform sympathy. He just listens, which is, Ngozi tells him later, the thing she needed most and expected least. Oh wow. His own father knew the truth and said nothing to protect a business deal. After everything Emeka trusted him with. If this story has you shaking right now, smash that like button and subscribe to African Tales by Amarachi. Drop a comment. Did Chief Obi deserve what came next? Because we are just getting started. Share this video and turn on notifications. Next chapter is about to change everything. The call comes at 2:47 in the morning. Emeka is awake when it arrives. He has not been sleeping well since the wedding, and he picks up on the first ring. The nurse's voice is calm and professional, the kind of calm that is specifically trained for middle-of-the-night calls that need to not cause panic before the information is delivered. Mr. Obi, Ngozi has gone into early labor. She asked us to call you. He is in his car before she finishes the sentence. He sits in the corridor outside the delivery room for 4 hours and 17 minutes. He drinks 2 cups of hospital tea that taste like nothing. He watches nurses move in and out with the efficient urgency of people who do this every day, and he sits with his hands clasped between his knees and he waits. The sound, when it comes, is not subtle. Chisholm arrives in the world screaming, a full-throated, furious, "I am here" announcement that fills the corridor and makes Emeka's breath catch in his chest. A nurse appears at the door and tells him it is a girl, mother and baby are well, and would he like to come in? Ngozi is propped against pillows, exhausted in the way that goes beyond physical tiredness into something cellular, and she is looking at the bundle in the nurse's arms with an expression Emeka has never seen on a human face before, something between terror and a love so total it has no edges. Chisholm, Ngozi says, when he asks what she will call her. It means God is with me. The nurse places Chisholm in Emeka's arms before he thinks to say whether he wants her there, and he looks down at this tiny, furious, perfect face, and something in him rearranges itself permanently and without his permission, like furniture moved in the night. He holds her for a long time. 3 days later, Senator Nwosu arrives at the hospital. He does not come alone. He comes with 2 lawyers in suits and a third man carrying a document folder, and he stands in the hospital corridor with the particular bearing of a man who has spent 40 years using legal machinery to make inconvenient things disappear. He has filed a defamation suit against Emeka Obi for the alter accusation, public humiliation, destruction of his daughter's reputation, damages to be assessed by the court. Emeka's lawyer meets them in the corridor. She is a small woman with deep dark brown skin and reading glasses pushed up on her forehead, and the expression of someone who has been waiting for exactly this moment. She opens her own folder. She presents the paternity documents, original copies, legally obtained, chain of custody intact, time-stamped, admissible in any court in the Federation. Senator Nwosu looks at the documents for a long time. The lawsuit disappears within 48 hours. No statement is issued. No apology is made. It simply stops existing, the way powerful men make inconvenient things stop existing when they realize the inconvenience is now on the other side. A week after that, Adiz comes. She comes alone. No lawyers, no driver waiting at the door, no designer bag on her arm. She wears a plain blue dress and her hair is pulled back simply, and she looks, without the performance of wealth around her, younger than Emeka has ever seen her. She asks if she can speak to him privately. He takes her to a small sitting room near the hospital entrance, and they sit across from each other for the first time since the altar. She tells him everything. She and Bello had been involved for 2 years. When she discovered she was pregnant, she panicked, genuinely, completely panicked, and went to her father. Senator Nwosu told her the situation was manageable. He told her to say nothing, marry Emeka, register the child under the Obi name, and manage the rest quietly over time. He told her that if she refused, if she came forward with the truth, the family would consider her a liability and she would face that alone. She wanted to tell Emeka. She tells him this directly, looking at him without flinching. She wanted to tell him on 4 separate occasions, once in his car after a dinner, once on the phone at midnight, once sitting across from him at his mother's table eating jollof rice on a Sunday. Each time she opened her mouth, she closed it again. Each time the calculation of what she would lose closed over the words before they could surface. "I am sorry," she says. "I know that is not enough. I know there is no version of sorry that is the right size for this. But it is true." Emeka looks at her. He thinks about 6 weeks of carrying documents in a drawer, 6 weeks of sitting across from her at dinner tables, 6 weeks of deciding. "The person you should have been brave enough to defy," he says, "was your father, not me." She nods. She does not cry. She stands up, and she leaves, and Emeka sits in the small sitting room for a while after she goes and discovers, with some surprise, that he does not hate her. He is not sure what he feels, something complicated, something that has grief and anger and a strange exhausted pity all pressed together, but it is not hatred. He goes back upstairs. Ngozi is feeding Chisholm, and she looks up when he enters, and she does not ask what happened with Adiz. She just looks at his face and moves over on the bed to make room beside her, and he sits down, and they watch Chisholm together in the quiet. Chief Obi makes his move on a Monday morning. Emeka discovers it when his access card fails at the Obi shipping headquarters gate, and his personal accounts return a frozen status notification on his banking app simultaneously. His phone rings 30 seconds later, not his father, but the company's legal director, reading from a prepared statement in the careful tone of a man who knows he is delivering bad news to someone who did not deserve it. Emeka is removed from the company board, his accounts frozen pending a family governance review, and a public statement is being prepared announcing that he is on personal leave to manage a private family matter. Emeka listens to the entire statement without interrupting. He thanks the legal director for calling personally. He ends the call. He sits in his car outside the headquarters gate for exactly 4 minutes. Then he calls his own lawyer and a business partner he has trusted for 6 years, and he tells them both the same thing. They are starting a company. By afternoon, he gives an interview. He is calm, precise, and completely without dramatics. He confirms the paternity documents exist and were obtained legally. He confirms his father was aware of the situation 2 months before the wedding and chose not to inform him. He announces that he is launching Obi Independent Logistics, a company built on his personal savings and a partnership he trusts, and that he wishes his father's company continued success operating without him. Lagos reacts the way Lagos always reacts to a story that has everything: money, betrayal, a rich man's fall, and a poor man's choice. Half the city calls him reckless and prideful and wasteful of a dynasty. The other half calls him the only honest man in the entire story. The comment sections of every major news platform run into the thousands. Emeka does not read them. What he does not expect is his mother. She comes to his apartment on a Wednesday evening alone, the way she came 6 weeks before the wedding with a brown envelope. She sits across from him at the same table, and she looks at him with the clear, steady gaze of a woman who has spent 30 years in a house where she was not permitted to be loud about the things she knew. She tells him she also knew, not about Adiz's pregnancy specifically, but about Chief Obi, about the way he conducts business, about the compromises he makes and the people he compromises in the process, about the years she spent managing his house and his temper, and the gap between who he presents to Lagos and who he is at the dinner table when the guests have gone home. "I have been waiting," she says, "for one of my children to be brave enough to choose differently." She places something on the table between them. It is a bank document, a personal savings account, opened in her name 15 years ago, built quietly from household allowances and her own small investments over decades. The balance is enough to seed a logistics company comfortably and have something left. "Build something you are proud of," she says. "Not something you inherited. Something you made." Emeka looks at his mother, this quiet woman who found a hospital receipt in a handbag and investigated alone and brought the truth to her son and waited, who has been building a silent exit fund for 15 years, who has held more of this family together than anyone in it has acknowledged. And something breaks in him that has been holding its shape through the altar and the study and the frozen accounts and the interview. He does not cry easily. He cries now. His mother sits with him until he is done. She does not say it will be fine. She does not offer comfort that costs nothing. She just stays, which is what she has always done, and it is enough. 2 days later, he goes to the hospital to tell Ngozi all of this. The bed is empty. The sheets are fresh. The small table beside the bed, where Ngozi kept the paperback novel he brought her in week 2 and the photograph of a seamstress shop that she had on her phone and printed at the pharmacy down the road, both are gone. The nurse at the station tells him she checked out that morning, paid her remaining balance. She had been saving the small amounts he gave her for transport, and left with the baby. On the pillow there is a folded piece of paper. He opens it. "Thank you for being kind. You do not owe me anything else." He reads it twice. He sits down on the edge of the empty bed in the quiet private ward, and he holds the note in both hands, and he thinks about a woman who has lost everything and still refuses to take more than she believes she has earned. Who listed him as her emergency contact without telling him. Who moved over on the bed to make room without being asked. Who told him the facts of her life without asking him to fix any of them. He stands up. Wait. She left. After everything. She packed her baby and walked away without even saying goodbye. If this has your heart in your chest right now, smash that like button and subscribe to African Tales by Amarachi. Drop a comment. Did Ngozi do the right thing by leaving, or should she have stayed? Share this video right now because next chapter is coming and it will leave you in tears. The Lagos Island motor park is loud and hot and smells of exhaust and roasted corn and the particular urgency of people going somewhere they need to be. Buses pull in and out in a rhythm that has no pattern anyone outside the park can decipher. Hawkers move between vehicles. Drivers shout destinations. The whole place operates at a frequency that is exhausting if you are not from here and completely normal if you are. Emeka moves through it in a plain shirt and trousers. No driver, no Agbada, looking at faces. He finds her near the far end of the park, sitting on a wooden bench with Chisholm strapped to her back in a wrapper, a small bag on the ground between her feet, watching the buses with the patient attention of someone who has learned to wait. She looks rested. The hospital did that much. She looks composed. She looks like herself, which is the thing about Ngozi that he has been trying to name since the day he crouched down on the pavement outside St. Michael's. She always looks like herself. There is no performance, no adjusted version for different audiences, no face she puts on for people she needs something from. She is always just exactly Ngozi, the same woman who stood in the back of a church in torn clothing and looked at him across 500 people without flinching. He stops in front of her. She looks up. Something moves across her face, not surprise exactly, more like a recognition she was not fully prepared for. "You listed me as your emergency contact," he says. "You did not have to do that." She looks at him steadily. "I did not think you would actually come. I came every day." "I know," she says quietly. "I know you did." He sits down on the bench beside her. Chisholm makes a small sound on her back, the contented half-asleep sound of a baby who does not yet know that the world is complicated. "I read your note," he says. "I meant it. I know you did." He turns to look at her. "That is actually why I am here." She watches him carefully, with the clear-eyed attention she gives everything. Not suspicious, not hopeful, just present and honest. "I am not here because my life fell apart and you were the first kind thing in it," he says. "I am not here because I feel responsible for you or because I want to rescue something. I am here because in the worst week of my life you were the only person who spoke to me like a person and not a position. You never asked me what I was going to do for you. You never adjusted how you sat or what you said based on what you thought I wanted. You tried to leave without telling me because you did not want to be a burden, and that note..." He stops. "That note is the most honest thing anyone has said to me in longer than I can account for." Ngozi is quiet for a moment. "I am not looking for a savior," she says. "Not defensively. Just clearly. I know. Chisholm needs a father who chooses her deliberately. Not one who drifts into it because he is lonely or guilty or because the timing made it easy." "I am standing in a motor park in Lagos," he says. "On a Tuesday afternoon, in a plain shirt, with no driver, having come here alone, to ask you to let me be deliberate about this from the very beginning." "That is not drifting." She looks at him. The noise of the park moves around them and neither of them notices it. "I have nothing," she says. "You understand that." I have a baby and a bag and an aunt in Abuja who does not know I am coming. You have a talent that built a business once and will build one again. You have a daughter who arrived in the world screaming and has not stopped making her presence known. You have the clearest sense of your own dignity of anyone I have ever met. He holds her gaze. Those are not nothing, Ngozi. She looks at Chisholm's small head resting against her back. She looks at the buses. She looks at him. She gets up from the bench. He stands. She picks up her bag, adjusts the wrapper that holds Chisholm, and looks at him with an expression that is not yet a smile but is the thing that comes just before one. A decision, quiet and complete, made by a woman who does not make them carelessly. I am not going to make this easy for you, she says. I am not asking for easy, he says. I am asking for honest. That I can do. They walk out of the motor park together, and the Lagos afternoon closes around them, indifferent and loud and bright. 2 years later, the city has moved on to other stories, the way cities do. Emeka's logistics firm, Obi Independent, incorporated with his savings and his mother's quiet fund and a partner he trusts, is profitable and expanding, running routes between Lagos, Abuja, and Port Harcourt with a fleet of 12 vehicles and a staff of 41. Chief Obi reaches out through an intermediary to request a reconciliation meeting. Emeka takes the meeting. He is courteous. He is not warm. He does not return to the company. Ngozi's atelier opens on a side street in Lagos Island on a Tuesday morning in February. A proper shop with her name above the door, 3 sewing machines, 2 apprentices she is training the way she was trained, and a waiting list that begins before the official opening because Mama Obi placed an order 3 months in advance and told every woman she knows. The startup funding comes from Mama Obi's personal account, extended as a business loan with terms Ngozi insists on putting in writing because she does not take gifts she cannot account for. Mama Obi agrees, and signs, and shows up on opening morning with her friends and her appetite for a celebration. Chisholm is 2 years old. She walks now, urgently, in the direction of whatever interests her, which is everything. She is loud in the particular joyful way of children who are thoroughly loved, and she is adored by everyone in the building, including the security guard who pretends not to be charmed by her and fails every time. Emeka and Ngozi marry on a Saturday morning in April. 12 guests, a garden in Ikoyi that belongs to a friend, no cameras permitted, no agbada. Ngozi wears a dress she made herself, ivory with green embroidery at the hem, and she looks exactly like herself, which is the most beautiful thing Emeka has ever seen. At the small reception afterward, someone asks Emeka, a journalist friend who cannot help himself, whether he has any regrets about the altar. About the scene, the exposure, the company, the cost of all the choices that followed that Saturday morning inside St. Michael's. Emeka is holding Chisholm on his hip. Across the garden, Ngozi stands with his mother, the two of them looking at something on Ngozi's phone, both laughing. His mother reaches out and touches Ngozi's arm with the ease of women who have decided they belong to each other's lives. He watches them for a moment. None, he says. Not one. And that is the power of a man who chose truth over convenience, character over wealth, and a woman worth choosing over a life worth performing. Thank you so much for watching this story on African Tales by Amarachi. If Emeka and Ngozi's journey moved you today, please smash that like button, subscribe to African Tales by Amarachi, and share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that real love is not about what someone has, it is about who they are. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Were you rooting for Ngozi from the moment she appeared outside that church? We read every single comment. We will see you in the next story. Do not go anywhere.